Guten Erev Shabbos, my holy sisters and brothers. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Friday afternoon as Shabbos is approaching. Let's light up the darkness. All right, who's in the house on a Friday? Come on, Glitch Book. Bill in mid-Missouri, Paula in Chicago, Shandora in the Bronx, Lucy in Minnesota, Rocco in Corpus Christi, Texas. Welcome, Rocco. That's a new name. Henny, another new name, saying Shabbat Shalom AT. Leona in Southern Illinois. Paul in the Great Northwest, James in Indianapolis. Paula, I heard that. I got a call, an important call during the warm-up, but nothing's more important than our class, so it'll have to wait until after we finish. Belle is deep in the heart of Texas. Not really, but we're in the north, but I feel I have to learn Texas songs. Happy Shabbat, y'all. Paula says, Amen. Over there on the YouTube side, nobody checking in yet. Okay, Rabosai, my friends. Hold on to your hats, buckle your seatbelts. We're starting a new track date, actually amazing timing. We enter track date Sotah today. It's actually a Chabad custom to learn Sotah, this track date, during the 49 days between Pesach, between Passover and Shavuos, when we're counting the Omer. We begin counting on the second night of Passover. We count off the 49 days, right, commemorating that we left Egypt and we received the Torah at Mount Sinai. And this tract date happens to have 49 pages, and that's why in the Chabad, also known as the Lubavitch world, they have the custom to learn this tract date during those 49 days. And it's just amazing that it kind of works out. It's not exactly lining up, but pretty close. We're starting track date Sotah today, Passover just a few days away, right? 5 days away. And so we're going to, a wonderful overlap between that Chabad custom and Sotah falling out in the 7.5-year Daf Yomi cycle at around the same time. Lots of really interesting material in this tract date. Generally speaking, these are the laws of the suspected adulteress. We don't have this process and procedure anymore, but we will again when the temple is rebuilt, when the Messiah comes and the third temple is rebuilt. But we study these laws. And, as we'll see, there's a lot of very interesting laws that come out of this procedure. But generally speaking, what we're talking about is that a husband becomes aware that his wife has been, acting in a way that would create suspicion that she might be having an affair. She secluded herself with a man who's not her husband. So he warns her. I heard that you were with this guy. Do not seclude yourself with that man again. And then she does it despite the warning. So then at that point, the husband and wife become prohibited to each other. And the only way for them to become permitted to each other is to take the journey to Jerusalem, to the temple, and to go through the procedure of the Sotah. And we'll learn all about that over the course of this tract date. Now, we got a little spoiled in tract date Nazir, where the pages were so short and we could often finish our shows. I added some extra material, so we were usually about 45 minutes, but it was a somewhat leisurely jaunt through those pages. Sotah, we start with some density, right? So this is definitely a longer daf. Let's get into it, and you can expect me to be booking along, as it were, so that we can get through the whole page. When we first started doing this class together, AT Daily, I did not anticipate that we'd be doing whole dafs, that this would be a proper Daf Yomi Shir, proper Daf Yomi class. I thought we were going to be covering highlights, but the level of our class has risen and had just made it possible for us to be a full-on Daf Yomi Shir. So let's do it. Let's get through this whole page. Page 2, every tract date, every Masechta begins on page 2, not page 1. So let's get into Sotah Daf Beis. Sotah page 2, the first page of Tractate Sotah. Here in chapter 1, here is Mishna number 1. with regard to one who issues a warning to his wife not to seclude herself with a particular man, so that if she does not heed his warning, she will assume the status of a woman suspected by her husband of having been unfaithful, the Sotah. Rabbi Eliezer says he issues a warning to her based on, meaning in the presence of, two witnesses for the warning to be effective. If two witnesses were not present for the warning, right? When he says to her, I heard you had secluded yourself with some man. Do not do that again. You are now officially on notice, right? That's the official warning. But it is only an official warning if he does that in the presence of two witnesses, right? So Rabbi Eliezer says he issues a warning to her based on the presence of two witnesses for it to be effective. If two witnesses were not present for the warning, she is not a Sotah, even if... Are you kidding me? Sorry about that. The volume is off. The answering machine is off. I don't know why it's making noise. Hopefully it will stop soon. There. Okay. If two witnesses were not present for the warning, she is not a Sotah, even if two witnesses saw her in seclusion with another man. And the husband gives the bitter water to her to drink. Right, so if she becomes a Sotah, for her to become permitted to him again, the basic procedure is they would go to Jerusalem to the temple, and they would go through this public ceremony where the verses that describe this procedure in the Torah would be written on a piece of paper, a piece of parchment, and then she would be held up in front of witnesses at the temple, and a priest would take that parchment with the verses written on them, put them into a bowl of water along with some earth, some dirt from the floor of the temple, the ground of the temple grounds, into that bowl. And those are the bitter waters. They're not actually bitter. I mean, there's just a little bit of ink from the parchment and some dirt from the ground. And then she drinks the water. So if she's innocent, nothing happens to her. If she's guilty, then miraculously she will die because of, adultery is a death penalty offense. But it's, done in this case by, the hand of heaven when she drinks that water with dirt and ink in it, right? So that's the bitter waters. And the husband gives the bitter water to her to drink based on the testimony of one witness who saw the seclusion, or even based on his own testimony that he himself saw them secluded together. As Rabbi Eliezer holds that only the warning requires two witnesses, but then if she goes ahead and secludes herself with the man anyway, that does not require two witnesses. Rabbi Yehoshua says he both issues a warning to her based on two witnesses, and he gives her the bitter water to drink, meaning they go to Jerusalem and she goes through that process, also based on two witnesses. Two witnesses to the warning and two witnesses to the seclusion. Where does the law end up on this? A man issues a warning to his wife stating, in the presence of two witnesses, do not seclude yourself. And the seclusion described in the verse is where a woman is secluded with a specific man about whom she was warned, and there are two witnesses attesting to this seclusion in accordance with Rabbi Yehoshua's opinion, based on the principle that his opinion is accepted in disputes with Rabbi Eliezer. So to make her drink the bitter waters in Jerusalem, there had to be two witnesses to the warning and two witnesses to the subsequent seclusion. So the Mishnah asks, how does he issue a warning to her in an effective manner? If he says to her in the presence of two witnesses, do not speak with the man named so-and-so, and she nevertheless spoke with him, she is still permitted to her home, meaning she didn't violate the terms that would make her a Sotah. Right? If the husband says, don't speak to so-and-so, that's not an appropriate warning for the whole body of law based on the Sotah. Right? This is all about she secluded herself. She put herself in a situation where, she could sleep with that man. It has nothing to do with whether you speak to some man who's not your husband or not. So that is not an effective warning. And that's why she remains permitted to her husband. She didn't become a Sotah. And she is permitted to engage in sexual intercourse with her husband. If she is the wife of a priest, she is still permitted to partake of teruma, right? Only priests can eat consecrated food known as teruma, and their families, right? So a Cohen and a Cohen's wife, she doesn't have to be born to a Cohen father, but if she marries a Cohen, she can eat teruma while she is his wife. If she becomes a Sotah, she can no longer eat teruma during the period that she is a Sotah. She's still his wife, but they're not permitted to each other sexually, and she's not permitted to eat teruma until she goes through that trial. And if she doesn't want to go through the trial, they can get a divorce. But for her to become permitted to her husband again after she becomes a Sotah, she has to drink the bitter water. However, if after he told her not to speak to so-and-so, she entered into a secluded place and remained with that man long enough to become defiled, i.e. sufficient time to engage in sexual intercourse, she is forbidden to her home from that moment until she undergoes the Sotah ritual. And likewise, if she was the wife of a priest, she is prohibited from partaking of teruma, as she was possibly disqualified by her infidelity, so long as her innocence is not proven by means of the bitter water. And if her husband dies childless before she drinks the bitter water, she performs chalitza with her late husband's brother and may not enter into levirate marriage, as if she had been unfaithful. Levirate marriage is forbidden, right? And so just keep in mind, like when you think about, witch trials and whatnot, which is not the same at all, but this idea of a trial by ritual. That, when you see this in movies, and usually it's in comedy, but it was a real thing, that, with the witch, right, if she drowned, then she's not a witch. And if she didn't drown, then she is a witch, in which case she's going to be executed, right? No win. There's no reason why drinking water that has some ink and dirt in it would kill you. Right? So the normal expectation, just in terms of like rationality or science, would be that if she drinks that water, nothing's going to happen to her. But because there's an awe and a faith associated with the Sotah ritual, if she drinks that water and she survives the ordeal, so that indicates that she was a faithful wife. The couple becomes permitted to each other again, and for having gone through this whole trek to Jerusalem and the embarrassment and the public spectacle of the Sotah ritual, hopefully the husband and wife, have gone through that ordeal together and now are ready to put the past behind them and, not come near to the boundaries of infidelity again and get on with their lives. Okay, that's Mishnah number 1. Here comes the Gemara. The Gemara questions the placement of this tractate within the Mishnaic order of Nashim. Now, the Talmud is divided into 6 orders, and this order, which includes Nidarim and Kedushin and Ketubos and Gittin, which mostly has to do with marriage. And marriage is a type of vow, right? So that we understand why Nidarim was there, which was vows. And we saw Nazir was the last tractate that we did, which wasn't about marriage at all, but was about taking a vow. So why, if we're talking about vows, okay, we could see that it's related to marriage, it's Sotah, but we've been talking about vows, right? There was Nidarim and then Nazir, and now we go to Sotah. So the Gemara is asking, why does this tractate follow Nazir? Now, the Tana arose from Tractate Nazir, which is the tractate preceding Sotah, in this order of the Mishnah. So what did he teach in Nazir that required that he teach Tractate Sotah immediately afterward? As at first glance, there seems to be no connection between this tractate and Nazir. So the Gemara answers, right, in case you're new, right, we just finished Nazir yesterday, but Nazir is the law of one who vows to abstain from wine and other products of the grapevine, not to become impure for the dead, not to cut one's hair during the period of his Naziris. What does that have to do with the ordeal of the Sotah? So the Gemara answers, this was done in accordance with the statement of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rebbe, with regard to the sequence of passages in the Torah, as it is taught in a Baraisa that Rebbe says, why is the portion of a Nazir, Numbers, the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, chapter 6, placed adjacent to the portion of a Sotah, right? Bamidbar, or the book of Numbers, chapter 5. They're right next to each other in the Torah. So this was done to tell you that anyone who sees a Sotah in her disgrace, right? Anyone who sees a woman go through the Sotah ritual in the temple when the temple is standing, as she undergoes the rite of the bitter water. Anyone who witnesses that should renounce wine, as wine is one of the causes of sexual transgression because it loosens inhibitions. And for the same reason that the Torah teaches the passages one after the other, Rebbe arranged these tractates one after the other. Now, this is not to say that one who witnesses the Sotah ordeal should become a Nazir. Not at all, right? We repeated over and over again that the sages discourage anyone from taking a vow of Naziris, and that's not what's implied here. But if you witness a Sotah in her disgrace, you should think very carefully about the role of alcohol in your own life, right? In fact, whenever you see somebody else going through some kind of humiliation or degradation or misfortune, you should have some empathy. And you should question, am I conducting myself in an appropriate manner? Anytime you see somebody else brought low, you should ask yourself, am I conducting myself properly? Right? And so they're not saying that you should take a vow to abstain from wine or even further become a Nazir, but you should question the use of alcohol in your own life. And if you find that you're using too much, that will be a time to reduce your wine consumption. And that's the kind of loose relationship between Nazir and Sotah. So the Gemara asks, but if so, let him teach tractate Sotah first, and then let him teach tractate Nazir, which is the way these topics are ordered in the Torah, and also accords better with the statement of Rebbe, right? That you see the Sotah, then you abstain from wine. So we should study Sotah and then Nazir. So the Gemara answers, since the Tana taught tractate Ketubos, which is about, the Ketubah, the marriage document, and in that tractate, he taught a chapter that begins one who vows, in which there are several Mishnas concerning vows between husbands and wives. He then taught tractate Nedarim, whose subject is vows and the laws of vows. And since he taught tractate Nedarim, then he taught tractate Nazir, which is similar to tractate Nedarim in that one becomes a Nazir by taking a vow. And so then he teaches tractate Sotah in accordance with the statement of Rebbe. And that's our discussion of why we're studying this tractate now. Now let's get back to the matter at hand. So the Gemara begins clarifying our Mishnah. The Mishnah states, one who issues a warning to his wife. By employing the descriptive phrase, one who issues a warning, and not the prescriptive phrase, one issues a warning, the Tana indicates that after the fact, yes, it is effective if he issues a warning in this manner. But ideally, no. One should not issue a warning to his wife at all ab initio. It is not prohibited to issue this warning to your wife if you think that she may have been unfaithful, but it is discouraged, right? In the same way that the sages discourage us from taking vows of Naziris, the sages discourage us from issuing the warning to a person's wife. Now, we often encounter, because these are ancient texts, and they were, and the sages lived and operated and taught and breathed in a world that was far more patriarchal than our world. So you might expect that this whole body of law, which is about the suspected adulteress, and not about the husband committing adultery, which is equally prohibited, but the Torah doesn't have there's not a body of law for a husband who commits adultery where he drinks bitter waters. That doesn't happen. But the sages right here, as you'll see, are going to say to a man who thinks his wife has been unfaithful and wants to issue the warning of a Sotah, don't do it. And the reason you shouldn't do it is because, first of all, you're going to render her prohibited to you if she then secludes herself, but also because you should be examining your own behavior that led this to happen, right? Your own. Like the sages are warning the husband that there's something lacking in him if the marriage has come to such a point where his wife is suspected of infidelity. And let's see how they get there. Right? Ideally, no. One should not issue a warning to his wife at all ab initio. Apparently, the Tana, the rabbi of our Mishnah, holds that it is prohibited to issue a warning to one's wife ab initio in a manner that can cause her to become a Sotah. And all the laws concerning a Sotah are for one who issued a warning when not obligated to do so. Right? All this body of law that follows is, okay, you issued a warning, now we're going to have to follow through with it, but you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have got yourself into that situation. You should have worked this out some other way. Now, Rav Shmuel Bar Rav Yitzchak says, when Reish Lakish would introduce his discussion of the Torah passage of Sotah, he would say this: heaven matches a woman to a man only according to his actions. As it is stated, for the rod of wickedness shall not rest upon the lot of the righteous. Psalms 125 verse 3. Indicating that if one has a wicked wife, it is due to his own evil conduct. And Rabba Bar Bar Chana said that Rabbi Yochanan says, and it is as difficult to match a couple together as was the splitting of the Red Sea. As it is stated in a verse that speaks of the Exodus from Egypt, God makes the solitary individuals dwell in a house. He brings out prisoners into prosperity. Psalms 68:7. God takes single individuals and causes them to dwell in a house by properly matching a man to a woman. And this is similar to the Exodus from Egypt, which culminated in the splitting of the Red Sea, where he released prisoners into prosperity. We've seen this teaching in a bunch of other places in the Talmud, that it is as difficult to find, to put soulmates together to make a successful couple as it is to, part the Red Sea. And so when couples marry, we should be thinking to ourselves, wow, a miracle was performed here, that these two found each other, thank God. And so the Gemara asks, is that so, that a man is matched to a woman according to his actions? But Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, 40 days before an embryo is formed, a divine voice issues forth and says, the daughter of so-and-so is destined to marry so-and-so, and such a house is destined to be inhabited by so-and-so, and such a field is destined to be farmed by so-and-so. And this clearly states that these matters, including marriage, are decreed for a person even before he is formed. He was fated to marry that woman. So why do we say that he got the wife that he deserves because of his actions if he was fated to marry her even before he was born? And the Gemara answers, this is not difficult. This statement that Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav with regard to is with regard to a first match, zivug, while this statement of Rabba Bar Bar Chana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan is with regard to a second match. A first match is decreed in heaven. A second match is according to one's actions. So the Gemara now clarifies the dispute in the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer says the husband must issue a warning to her based on, meaning in the presence of, two witnesses. And then he gives the bitter water to her to drink based on the testimony of a single witness. Now Rabbi Yehoshua says no. He both issues a warning to her, don't seclude yourself with that specific man. By the way, it's not a general warning, don't seclude yourself with any man. It's he heard that something was going on with her and some particular man, and he says, do not seclude yourself with that particular man. That warning must be issued in the presence of two witnesses. All agree. And then she does seclude herself with that man. So Rabbi Eliezer says, we only need one witness to testify that she secluded herself with that man after the warning in the presence of two witnesses to trigger the Sotah ritual, and that she becomes prohibited to her husband until they have that ritual. But Rabbi Yehoshua says no, the warning, two witnesses, and the seclusion afterward has to be in the presence of two witnesses to trigger the ritual. Right, so Rabbi Eliezer says the husband must issue a warning to her based on, in the presence of two witnesses, but the seclusion can be on the basis of one witness. And the Gemara notes, but Rabbi Yehoshua said what I just said. So the Gemara notes, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua disagree only with regard to the requisite number of witnesses for the warning and the seclusion, whether one or two witnesses are required. But with regard to the testimony concerning defilement after the warning was issued and seclusion had occurred, they agree that even the testimony of one witness is deemed credible to establish that the woman actually engaged in sexual intercourse with the man while secluded. So what we're seeing here is that it's actually potentially a three-step process, right? So we've already talked about
the warning. So he warns her, don't seclude yourself with that particular man. That has to be 2 witnesses. Then she secludes herself with that particular man for enough time that, they could have had sex while they were in that secluded location. Rabbi Eliezer says 1 witness is enough that she secluded herself with the man after the warning. Rabbi Yehoshua says you need 2 witnesses for that. The third step, which doesn't always happen, is that then there's a witness that actually saw the woman and her lover have sex. They actually witnessed that, right? So if she actually was witnessed in flagrante, right, like that she actually had sex with that man who's not her husband, the testimony 1 witness will do, right, after we've already have witnesses that she was warned and that she's secluded. If she was then even witnessed to have sex, right, how could that happen? Like, there's definitely something wrong with the behavior here, where she's not only having sex with this lover, but somebody was able to see it. So at that point, the Sotah ritual does not apply. There is no going back from that, right? If she was warned, and she secluded with her lover, and she was witness having sex with her lover, now the husband and wife have to divorce. They cannot remain together because she is fully established as having committed adultery. Right now, if there was never the warning and the seclusion, but somebody witnessed her having sex with another man, that would not be enough to have 1 witness. You'd need 2 witnesses for that. And then they would have to divorce, and she would be prohibited to him, and she would give up any payment that she would have received under the ketubah, the marriage contract, because she cheated on her husband. But now that there was 2 witnesses to the warning and to the seclusion, which is because the law is according to Rabbi Yehoshua, 1 witness is sufficient to say that, and she had sex and I saw it, for them to have to divorce and that they are prohibited to each other. Now the Gemara comments, and we learned also in another Mishnah, that if a single witness says, I saw that she was defiled, then she would not drink the bitter water, as the testimony is accepted and her husband must divorce her, and she forfeits payment of her marriage contract. Therefore, there's no need to perform the Sotah rite. The Gemara asks, by Torah law, from where do we derive that 1 witness is deemed credible with regard to testifying that a Sotah engaged in sexual intercourse? And the Gemara answers, as the sages taught in reference to the verse describing the circumstances in which a woman defiled through an act of adultery becomes forbidden to her husband, which states, Numbers 5:13, and a man lie with her carnally, and it be hid from the eyes of her husband, she being defiled secretly, and there is no witness, singular, aid, no witness, as opposed to no witnesses, against her. And the verse is speaking of a lack of 2 witnesses. When the verse refers to the lack of an aid written in the singular, ed, witness, it actually indicates that there are not 2 witnesses against her, but only 1, as the Baraisa will now explain. So the Baraisa continues and asks, or perhaps the verse is referring only to a case where there was not even 1 witness to the act of sexual intercourse, as the singular usage of the word aid, witness, would seem to indicate. So the Baraisa now proves that elsewhere the word witness is used to indicate 2 witnesses, as the verse states, 1 witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or any sin that he sins. By the mouth of 2 witnesses or by the mouth of 3 witnesses shall a matter be established. Deuteronomy 19:15. Now we're on 2b. The Baraisa infers a general principle from this verse by asking, by inference from that which is stated in the verse, even with the omission of the word 1, a witness shall not rise up against a man, do I not know that it is referring to 1 witness, as the term rise up, yakum, is written in the singular form? What is the meaning when the verse states explicitly 1 witness, since it is obviously referring to only 1 witness? And the Baraisa answers, this established a paradigm that every place where the word witness, aid, written in the singular, is stated in the Torah without specifying a number, there are 2 witnesses there, unless the verse specifies that it is referring to only 1 witness by writing the word 1, right? Generally speaking, we establish that a person becomes liable for criminal liability or other kinds of liability by the mouth of 2 witnesses or more. Why are we going to allow this woman to be labeled a confirmed adulterer based on the testimony of a single witness? And the answer is, well, it's not the testimony of a single witness. She was warned in the presence of two witnesses not to seclude herself with that man. She was witness secluding herself with that man by two witnesses. And what we only have one witness for is the actual act of lovemaking. But the fact that she already went that far was in the presence of two witnesses. I got a sneeze coming. Maybe. There it is. The Baraisa returns to discuss the verse concerning a Sotah. And the merciful one states there is no witness against her. Numbers 5:13, which therefore means that there are not two witnesses to the sexual intercourse that could testify with regard to her. Rather, there is only one witness. And the Baraisa completes its interpretation. Further in the verse it states, and she was not taken, indicating that the verse is referring to a case in which it is known that the woman was not raped. And this knowledge is based on the testimony of only one witness, as the verse had already stated that there were not two witnesses. And since one witness saw her willingly engage in sexual intercourse with another man, she becomes forbidden to her husband. We're not talking, by the way, about criminal liability here. We're just talking about that she becomes permanently forbidden to her husband, who issued the warning in front of two witnesses, and she was secluded in front of two witnesses. And it's just that we only need a single witness for the defilement. So the Gemara continues this reasoning, but this would seem to indicate that the only reason to interpret the verse concerning a Sotah as referring to a case pardon me, as referring, where am I? Right. But this would seem to indicate that the only reason to interpret the verse concerning a Sotah as referring to a case where there is only one witness is that it is written in the other verse, Deuteronomy 19:15, one witness shall not rise up against a man, indicating that any unspecified usage of the word witness in the Torah refers to two witnesses. But were it not for this inference, I would say that when the term witness is employed in the verse concerning a Sotah, it is referring to one witness. However, this would mean that the woman is forbidden to her husband even if there is not even one witness who saw the alleged sexual intercourse itself. And if there is not even one witness to testify, then with what testimony does she become forbidden to her husband? Obviously, even without another verse, it must be understood that the verse is indicating that there are not two witnesses, but there is one, or else there would be no testimony to her actions. So the Gemara answers, it was necessary to infer the interpretation of the verse concerning the Sotah from the other verse mentioning one witness. Otherwise, it might enter your mind to say that the verse here that states there is no witness against her means that a single witness testifying about the sexual intercourse is not deemed credible with regard to her under any circumstances, and the testimony of one witness is not accepted in the case of a Sotah. But the Gemara questions this analysis. What would be the logic in interpreting the verse as indicating that a single witness is not deemed credible with regard to her? But if that is the interpretation, what does the verse require in order for a Sotah to be rendered forbidden? And the Gemara explains its question. If the verse is understood as indicating that a woman is not forbidden until there are two witnesses to testify to her infidelity, then let the verse be silent from any mention of witnesses, as the requirement for two witnesses in matters of sexual impropriety is derived by means of a verbal analogy from the word matter, devar, written with regard to monetary matters. So the verbal analogy by which it is learned that two witnesses are required goes like this. A verse concerning forbidden relations states, because he has found some unseemly matter about her, Deuteronomy 24:1. And a verse concerning monetary matters states, by the mouth of two witnesses or by the mouth of three witnesses shall a matter be established, Deuteronomy 19:15. And I would know that the requirement that two witnesses testify applies in the case of a Sotah, just as it does in all other matters of testimony in the Torah. And so the Gemara answers, it was necessary that the verse be stated in the regards to the Sotah as well, for it might enter your mind to say that testimony concerning a Sotah is different from other testimony. And even the testimony of one witness would be sufficient because there is a basis for anticipating the matter. That's the language we saw at the end of Tractate Nazir. When you find, one previously unknown corpse in a field, you probably just found one corpse. You find two there, it's okay, you found two. you find 3 in one place, all lying in the same direction, you have reason to assume this was a cemetery. And now you have to search the surrounding area to see if this was a cemetery that somehow got buried and was lost, and there are other bodies in the area. You have basis to assume, to anticipate the matter. Here, she was warned by her husband not to seclude. She was witness secluding herself. Now we have basis to anticipate the matter that if one person saw her actually sleep with her lover, that she, committed infidelity, and she and her husband have to be prohibited to each other. There is basis to anticipate the matter. Right. So since the husband issued a warning to her about this particular man, and she then secluded herself with him, so perhaps even one witness should be deemed credible with regard to her. Therefore, the verse informs us that one witness is not deemed credible to render her forbidden to her husband, according to this argument. Now, the Gemara asks another question concerning its earlier analysis. But how can you think to say that the verse would be stating that one witness is not deemed credible with regard to her having engaged in sexual intercourse, and she would remain permitted to her husband? But from the continuation of the same verse, from the fact that it is written, and she was not taken, which indicates that the verse is referring to a case where she was not raped, one concludes by inference that the verse is referring to a woman who becomes forbidden to her husband for engaging in consensual, adulterous sexual intercourse. So the Gemara answers, nevertheless, it was still necessary to teach the principle derived from the other verse, that the term witness is referring to 2 witnesses, even in the context of a sotah, as it might enter your mind to say that the verse should be understood to mean that one witness is not deemed credible with regard to her, and she remains permitted to her husband until there are 2 witnesses who testify to the sexual intercourse, and with the testimony of 2 witnesses as well, it is only when she was not seized and forced to cohabit with the man. Therefore, to refute this possible interpretation, the Baraisa teaches us that witness always referred to 2 witnesses unless stated otherwise. Therefore, the phrase in the verse concerning a sotah that says there is no witness, singular, against her, means that there were not 2 witnesses, but if there was only 1 witness, he is deemed credible, right? Only in the context of the sotah, where there were already 2 levels that she transgressed, where there were 2 witnesses, are we going to accept the testimony of the single witness. The Mishna teaches that Rabbi Yehoshua says he both issues a warning to her based on 2 witnesses, and he gives her the bitter water to drink based on the testimony of 2 witnesses who saw her seclude. Right? That's the first 2 levels. The warning not to seclude, and that she secluded herself anyway. Those 2 steps require 2 witnesses to proceed. And the verse states, and there is no witness, singular, against her, ba, which was explained to mean that there were not 2 witnesses, but only 1 who testified concerning her defilement, that 3rd step where they actually saw the sex happen. So Rabbi Yehoshua derives from the term ba, against her, which could also be understood as with regard to it, that in this matter of defilement, 1 witness suffices, but not with regard to the warning. And additionally, he derives with regard to it, but not with regard to the seclusion. Therefore, there must be 2 witnesses to testify about both the warning and the seclusion. Now, Rabbi Eliezer said 2 witnesses are required for the warning, but 1 witness will suffice to say that he saw her secluded with the man that she was warned not to seclude herself with. And then that would trigger the Sotah ritual. How does Rabbi Eliezer derive his ruling, which is the minority ruling that we don't follow? Rabbi Eliezer says that the only derivation to be learned is with regard to it, but not with regard to the warning. Therefore, the warning, unlike the defilement, requires 2 witnesses. The seclusion is not contrasted with the defilement, and like the defilement, requires only 1 witness. Now, the Gemara questions Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, but why not say that one should also derive with regard to it, but not with regard to the seclusion, as does Rabbi Yehoshua? And the Gemara answers Rabbi Eliezer does not accept that derivation, as seclusion is juxtaposed to defilement by the verse as it is written, and she was defiled secretly, Numbers 5:13, and the term secretly is referring to seclusion. Therefore, the same law should apply to both. And the Gemara asks, but the warning is also juxtaposed to defilement, as it is written, and he warned his wife, and she became defiled. Numbers 5:14. And the same law should apply to both. And the Gemara answers, the merciful one excluded at least one of the two by use of the expression against her, which teaches that in one matter other than defilement, two witnesses are required, the seclusion. And the Gemara asks, and what did you see to determine that the exclusion from the law of one witness sufficing is with regard to the warning? Perhaps the exclusion from the law of one witness sufficing is with regard to the seclusion, as Rabbi Eliezer holds. And the Gemara answers, it stands to reason that it is preferable to compare seclusion to defilement, as testimony with regard to seclusion forbids her to her husband, just as testimony with regard to defilement does. The Gemara rejects this reasoning. On the contrary, it is preferable to compare the warning to defilement, as it is the main cause of her becoming forbidden. Seclusion alone, absent a warning, would not cause her to be forbidden to her husband. If a woman, secludes herself with a man who is not her husband, even if she spends a night in a hotel in the same room with this man who is not her husband, that in itself does not cause her to become prohibited to her husband, does not trigger the Sotah ritual, because her husband didn't warn her first not to do that. If he heard she did that, presumably he would then issue the warning. Although, as we've seen, he should be checking his own conduct. Maybe, this is a couple with poor values, and maybe he committed adultery and then she did. Who knows what's going on? But if he then warned her and she secluded herself after the warning, and there were two witnesses to both the warning and the subsequent seclusion, that would trigger the Sotah ritual. Where am I? Okay, so the Gemara rejects this reasoning. On the contrary, it is preferable to compare the warning to the defilement that is the main cause of her becoming forbidden. And the Gemara counters, if there is no seclusion, is there any significance to the warning? The warning results in a prohibition only after the warned woman secluded herself with her lover, with the man. The Gemara counters, and if there is no warning, what effectiveness does seclusion have? Both the warning and the seclusion are required for her to be forbidden to her husband. So the Gemara concludes, even so, it is preferable to compare the seclusion to the defilement, as the seclusion is the beginning of the defilement. Therefore, just as the testimony of one witness suffices with regard to the defilement, the testimony of one witness suffices with regard to the seclusion. That's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. The Gemara comments, the Mishna is not in accordance with the opinion of this Tana, who presents a different version of Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, as it is taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, says in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, one who issues a warning to his wife, issues a warning based on one witness, or based on his own testimony, and he gives the bitter water to her to drink based on the testimony of two witnesses who saw her secluded. So that's a completely different opinion than we've encountered so far. We've said Eliezer and Yehoshua agree, two witnesses required for the warning. They disagree. Yehoshua says two witnesses required that she secluded herself after having been warned. Eliezer says one witness will suffice to trigger the Sotah ritual. And then they seem to all agree that one witness is enough that she was defiled after she was warned and she was witness secluding herself. But here, this one is saying one witness will do for the warning, two witnesses required for the seclusion. This is not the law, but this is a different opinion. Right, so one who issues a warning to his wife, according to Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, so he somehow transmitted what doesn't seem to be Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, but in his name. So one who issues a warning to his wife issues a warning based on one witness or even his own testimony, and he gives the bitter water to her to drink based on the testimony of two witnesses who witnessed the seclusion. And the Baraisa further states that the rabbis responded, according to the statement of Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, as to Rabbi Eliezer's opinion that one need not issue a warning in the presence of two witnesses. There is no end to the matter, as the Gemara will explain. The Gemara explains, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Yehuda? Well, the verse states, against her, from which he infers that one witness suffices to testify with regard to it, the defilement, but not with regard to the seclusion as above. Okay, so the Gemara asks, but why not say that one should also derive with regard to it, but not with regard to the warning? And the Gemara answers, the warning is juxtaposed to defilement, just as it is written, and he warned his wife, and she should become defiled, that the same law should apply to both. Right? So Rabbi Yosei is saying, okay, one witness will suffice for the defilement, one witness will suffice for the warning, two witnesses needed for the seclusion. So the Gemara counters, the seclusion is also juxtaposed in the verse to defilement, as it is written, and she was defiled secretly. Numbers 5:13. Therefore, the same law should apply to both. And the Gemara responds, the verse is coming to teach how much is the measure of seclusion, i.e. the amount of time that the man and woman must be secluded together for it to be defined as seclusion, which, as the comparison indicates, is the amount of time sufficient for defilement. The Gemara continues to clarify the Baraisa. Now, the rabbis responded, according to the statement of Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Yehuda. As to Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, there is no end to the matter. Okay, so the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of there is no end to the matter? And the Gemara answers, it is that there may be times when the husband did not warn his wife, but after hearing of her seclusion with another man, he says, I warned her, which will be sufficient to render her forbidden to him until she drinks. So as a policy matter, we can't accept a situation where the warning doesn't require witnesses. According to Rabbi Yosei, the husband himself can be the witness about the warning. So, any emotional, angry husband can say, well, I warned her. And then since no witnesses are required, this would be triggering the Sotah ritual way too often, right? So the rabbis are not going to accept this view, and that's why. And that's what they mean by there's no end to the matter. Now, the Gemara is puzzled by this logic. But according to our Mishna, does the matter, in fact, have an end? Rabbi Eliezer states in the Mishnah that a woman must drink the bitter water based upon her husband's own statement that she secluded herself with the man about whom she warned her. Right? According to Rabbi Eliezer, who says one witness will do, that she secluded herself, and that one witness could be the husband himself. So isn't that already going to trigger the Sotah ritual too easily? Well, there too, one could ask whether there may be times when she did not seclude herself with the other man, and where her husband says she secluded herself, thereby rendering her forbidden to him until she drinks the bitter water. If so, why do the rabbis take issue only with the version of Rabbi Eliezer's opinion as presented by Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, and not with the version recorded in the Mishnah? So Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef says that Rabbi Yochanan says the rabbis in the Baraisa meant to state that even according to the statement of Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, there is no end to the matter. The rabbis wish to say that even according to this version of Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, the husband can cause her to drink if he were to lie. And the same is obviously true for our Mishnah. And so the Gemara notes the phrase, even according to the statement of Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, even according, right, indicates it is a lesser novelty to say that there is no end of the matter according to him, and it is not necessary to say that the same would be true according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer as cited in our Mishnah. But the Gemara says, on the contrary, according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer as stated in our Mishnah, there is a legitimate basis for suspicion with regard to the woman, as there were two witnesses who saw the husband issue the original warning to her. And therefore it is understandable that the testimony of the husband may be relied upon when he testifies that she secluded herself with another man. That's not the law. We follow Rabbi Yehoshua that we require two witnesses for both the warning and the seclusion, but at least this version of Rabbi Eliezer's holding makes some logical sense. Two witnesses saw him warn her. Okay, so he only requires one witness that there was a subsequent seclusion. By contrast, there, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that he's stating Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, there is no legitimate basis to prohibit her to him, since there are no witnesses that she had been warned by her husband at all. Therefore, it may be that the rabbis took issue only with the version of Rabbi Eliezer's opinion as presented by Rabbi Yosef, the son of Rabbi Yehuda. I'm almost done. We're moving fast through a lot of material, but I am 2 paragraphs away. So if you got questions or comments, get them in now. The Gemara clarifies this statement of Rabbi Yochanan. Rather, if it was stated like this. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef says that Rabbi Yochanan says that the rabbis said. according to the statement of Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, who is not concerned that accepting the testimony of one person with regard to the warning will enable false claims by the husband. Even according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer cited in our Mishna, there is no end to the matter, since the concern there is less severe, as there is no legitimate basis to render her forbidden to her husband. Now, Rav Hanina of Sotah says, in the present, a man should not say to his wife, do not seclude yourself with so-and-so. And the reason is that perhaps we maintain that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a warning is effective even based on his own testimony, right? So even though you're not, the law is to trigger the Sotah ritual, which begins, right, when it's triggered, right? So the halacha is you warn your wife not to seclude yourself with a particular man, and you do that in front of two witnesses. And then two witnesses see her seclude herself with that man anyway. At that moment, the husband and the wife become prohibited to each other. There's no backing away from this matter. The ritual has begun, right? The procedure has been triggered. And after that, the husband and wife become prohibited to each other. They can't kiss and make up. They can't say, oh, you know what? We love each other. We shouldn't have got ourselves into this. Now they have to go to Jerusalem when the temple is standing and drink the bitter waters. So, what Rav Hanina of Sotah is saying, and since we're not totally sure that is the law, but that perhaps the minority opinion will turn out to be the law, so therefore, don't issue that warning even in the absence of witnesses, because you might be triggering the Sotah procedure when you issue that warning. So don't say that warning with that formula that might begin the Sotah train, right? A man should not say to his wife, do not seclude yourself with so-and-so. And the reason is that perhaps we maintain that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a warning is effective even based on the husband's own testimony. And if she were then to seclude herself with that man, she would be required to drink the bitter water to render herself permitted to her husband again. And since today, the bitter water of a Sotah is not used to evaluate her fidelity and permit her to her husband, he will end up forbidding her to himself with an irrevocable prohibition. And they'll have to get a divorce because in the heat of the moment, he issued this warning. And then she went ahead and ignored it. And then they have to end up getting a divorce. Now, what is the law about this? Do we follow Rav Hanina of Sotah? A man should not say to his wife, even in private, this is the law, do not seclude yourself with so-and-so, as the law may be in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, that if the woman would then seclude herself with that man, she would become forbidden to her husband forever, since the Sotah rite cannot be performed. We don't have the temple, you can't perform the Sotah rite. Now, some say that this prohibition is not by Torah law, Rashba, and others say that it is a prohibition only for those who want to fulfill their moral obligation to heaven. So the Rima holds that if a husband does issue such a warning, he should immediately retract it. If, after warning her, the husband himself sees his wife in seclusion with that man, she is forbidden to her husband and he must divorce her. However, he is obligated to pay the value of the marriage contract. So, ideally, we just distance ourselves from this kind of questionable behavior. And wives should not seclude themselves with men who are not their husbands, particularly after being asked by the husband not to do so. Okay, let's go to questions and comments on Sotah, page 2, the first page of Tractate Sotah. Peggy, what happened to her if she refused to drink the bitter water? They had to divorce. Right? She doesn't have to drink the bitter water, but she can't become permitted to her husband again. Right? If, in the presence of two witnesses, he warned her not to seclude. And if, in the presence of two witnesses, she secluded. Now, the only way for the husband and wife to become permitted to each other again and go on with their lives as husband and wife is to drink the bitter water. Right? She doesn't have to drink the bitter water, but then they divorce and she loses the ketubah payment. Lucy,
would the Sotah ritual then end up protecting a woman that was falsely accused by lying witnesses? 100%. That's exactly what it would do, right? And as we'll see later on, the Torah also promises something unexpected, right? That, because if it says if she drinks the bitter waters and nothing happens to her, then she is innocent. And you would expect the Torah to just say, and now they're permitted to each other again. But the Torah goes one step further and says, then she is innocent, they are permitted to each other again, and she will bear children, right? Where did that come from? And it's interesting that it might be that that they go through this ordeal, and perhaps she was infertile before and she becomes fertile later. Now, this is not something that husbands and wives would sort of orchestrate because they were having trouble conceiving and they would go through the Sotah ritual on purpose. I think then it would not trigger this, sort of miraculous fertility. But it's, something that we'll discuss later in our journey through this tractate. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night, Saturday, with page 3. And we're going to have to keep it moving in this tractate because, as you can see, the pages are long. Recall that on next Wednesday, Passover begins Wednesday night. We'll have a class at an unusual time, 10 a.m. Pacific. Then we'll just do the last sugya of tractate Nazir, make our siyum on that. So that firstborns who participate in a Sudas mitzvah, a mitzvah meal, like at the conclusion of a tractate, then can eat something, and then that overrides the fast of the firstborn, which normally happens on that day. But we'll also do the regular page of Sotah scheduled on that day. Then there won't be class on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and we'll have class again on Sunday, right at the regular time. But we'll publish the holiday schedule in the next AT email bulletin, which will come out early next week. So stay tuned for that. And if you haven't subscribed already, you can sign up for the AT email at accidentaltalmudist.org. Have a great Shabbos.